Kevin, there's a lot of real intensive legal jargon around bankruptcy. There's Chapter 7, there's Chapter 13. Can you explain to us the difference between those two primary things?
Mm-hmm. The Chapter 7 is called a liquidation bankruptcy. And the reason it's called liquidation is that all unsecured debts, like credit cards, medical bills, lines of credit, are wiped away. You never have to repay them. With secured debts, like car loans and mortgages, you have the option to keep them if you want. If you want to keep your home, you continue to pay the mortgage and you can keep it. If you want to walk away from the home, you can in a Chapter 7. They call it the liquidation bankruptcy because there's a trustee who's appointed by the bankruptcy court, and their job is to look out and see if there's any money that can be paid to creditors. And there's things that they go out and they look for. And if they find something, then they liquidate it, i.e. they sell it, and then they pay it out to creditors with it. Now, not everything gets sold, and that's kind of a common misconception with the Chapter 7, is people think, well, I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my car. They're going to take my furniture. They're going to come look at my home. They don't. You get up to $60,000 of equity in your home. And in today's market right now, very few people even have equity. So losing a home is never a concern, or not a big concern right now with a bankruptcy. Cars, it's $5,000 if you're single, $10,000 if you're married. And it doesn't matter how many cars you have. You could have 3 cars, and if they're all paid off and less than $10,000, you'll keep them. For a married couple, the household items are up to $4,000. And that stuff's valued at garage sale prices. We certainly pay more for these items when we buy them at a retail store. But the reality is that if a trustee were to take them, the best he or she can do is sell them at a garage sale. And that's where the prices are going to come in. And in Colorado, $4,000 is more than enough for household items. It's $3,000 for jewelry. Again, that's at pawn shop prices. It's usually 20% of what you paid for it. And then with clothing, you get $3,000. And that would be what you could sell it for at Goodwill. So while they do call it the liquidation bankruptcy, most people don't lose anything in a Chapter 7. And if they do have some unexempt items that could be taken, and some of the common ones here in Colorado are like boats, an ATV, tax refunds. Those are something that the trustee could take to pay creditors. But what we do in that situation is we just do some planning around it. If the boat is something that you have a loan on, it's not an issue at all. But if you own it outright, you know, you have the option. You could let the trustee sell it, or what you can do is sell it yourself for fair market value and then use the money to catch up on a mortgage, car payment, you know, whatever it is that you need to do. So with Chapter 7s, we have a lot of flexibility in it, and it's not as onerous as people really think it is. Now at Chapter 13, that's called the repayment bankruptcy, and the common misconception with Chapter 13 is that they think, I have to repay all my debt. And they're like, I can't even afford to pay it, let alone repay all of it. And again, that's not the case in a Chapter 13. What you do in a Chapter 13 is you actually pay what they call your disposable income. And what we do there is we start with your income before tax. We take out your taxes, your withholding. We figure out how much you spend on rent, utilities, food. And at the end of that, if there is any disposable income, you might pay some to your unsecured creditors, who are like your credit cards, medical bills. Or if you don't have any disposable income, which is common, you don't pay anything to them with it. Chapter 13s they're a little more rigid in their application. They're not as flexible as they are in a Chapter 7. Where I typically use a Chapter 13 is somebody who's fallen behind on their mortgage payments and they want to keep the home. It's the best way to save a house from foreclosure. What we do is we file the case and we take the amount of money that they've missed over the years and they repay it over 3 to 5 years. So that's a good way for them to keep their home. Another great thing with a Chapter 13 right now is we do a thing called a strip off. What we have seen lately is home prices have fallen so much that if you are a person where the value of your home is worth less than your first mortgage, what you can do is actually a thing called you can strip off your second mortgage. So say you have a first mortgage of $200,000, you have a second mortgage of $50,000, and your home in today's market, and we're talking about today's market, is only worth $175,000. In a Chapter 13, you can actually remove the second mortgage from the property at the completion of the plan. And we're seeing a lot of that right now given what's happened in the real estate market. Another area we use Chapter 13s is with tax debt. That's a common misconception. A lot of people think you cannot discharge tax debt at all. And what I'm talking about is state and federal income taxes. You actually can discharge some tax debt. You just cannot get rid of the tax debt that you incurred within the last 3 years. So if we're sitting here in 2009 and you file bankruptcy, you cannot discharge tax debt from 2006, 2007, 2008. But if you have tax debt that was incurred 2005 and prior, you can actually discharge that. There are some people, though, who have tax debt in the last 3 years. It's around 10, 20, 30 grand. And what you can do in there, in a Chapter 13 plan, is actually repay that tax debt free of interest and penalties. And a lot of times you can do it at a monthly payment that is lower than what the IRS will give you. And then another area that we use Chapter 13s with student loans. Student loans is a non-dischargeable debt, meaning that if you file bankruptcy, at the end of the day, you're still going to have your student loan debt. It doesn't go away. But in a Chapter 13, what we can do is kind of re-budget that student loan debt, where if you have student loan payments of $800 a month and you're in a job right now that just doesn't pay enough where you can afford that payment, what we can do is put you in a Chapter 13 plan where a 3 to 5 year period, you can actually pay less during that period. So it gets you a little relief from it. And so those are the common things with 13s that we do. If that doesn't, and another only other time that we use a Chapter 13 is if you don't qualify for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. A couple of years ago, Congress amended the Bankruptcy Act. And what they did for a Chapter 7 is they put in a hurdle in whether you qualify for a Chapter 7 or not. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is based on income and family size. If you're a single person in Colorado and you make less than $45,000 a year, you automatically qualify for bankruptcy, a Chapter 7. You can go through it. But if you make more than that, it doesn't mean you don't qualify for Chapter 7, but we have to do a thing called a means test. And what the means test is we look at the type of debts you have and we take that into consideration, a calculation, to see if we can get you to qualify. If you're somebody who has a $2,000 mortgage and a $500 car payment, typically you can qualify if you make less than $60,000 because those two payments are going to bring you down under the median income and then you're eligible for a Chapter 7. But say you're a single person in Colorado and you're making $70,000 with the mortgage and the car payment, and we can't get you under that and you're about $300 short a month, then your only option under bankruptcy at that point is to file the Chapter 13. What you'll do there is you'll pay that $300 a month for the next 5 years, and at that time you get a discharge. So using the $300, it's about $18,000 that you'd pay back of debt. And if you're a person who has $50,000, $70,000 of debt, Chapter 13 is still a great option for you because you only paid back $18,000 and the other $30,000, $55,000, you wiped it off and you don't have to pay it.